Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, time to talk once again about the Ohio State-Minnesota game, and after watching it a second time, it still went exactly like I thought it would before the game even started.
Turns out this time it was 56-3 when I rewatched it. I don't know what copy you got, Tom. Mine may have been enhanced by artificial intelligence just to, suss it out a little bit more and add some missed drives that should have taken place. But yes, here we are with our rewatch to talk about the things that maybe we missed watching it live that we got to catch on the TV copy. And I always find these informative because there's a rewind button on TV and not necessarily in real life. So Tom, I'll let you go first. Tell the people what's something that you learned from the rewatch.
Let's see. I always find these instructive because I don't have large people standing in my way. So the rewind button is nice, but also the can see everything on the field is nice for me as well. Let's start with the incomplete passes that Julian Sayin threw, because I thought he was really good all game. 4 incomplete passes all game. He completed 85% of his passes in the game. He was like 22 for 26, I think. But the 4 incomplete passes, one of them down the sideline to Jeremiah Smith, where it hit him in the hands. Great play by the defensive back to break it up. Second one, slant to Jeremiah Smith in the end zone. Coy Parrish made a great play underneath to break it up, almost picked it off. Third one was Carnell Tate in the back corner of the end zone. Looked like he maybe kind of just threw that one away. And then the last one was kind of a fake pitch. And then Max Clare was pretty well covered down the right sideline, and he threw kind of high in a way where no one else could get it. And then it turned out Clare couldn't get it either. But there was really not oh, that was a bad throw, or, oh, that wasn't the right decision, or it was, you're 22 of 26, you're having a pretty good night. And I thought, okay, let's go back and watch, okay, what happened on the ones where he didn't complete it? And you looked at them and they were all pretty much like, yeah, that was probably the right decision. That was a good throw. That was, sometimes you tip your hat. The only thing you really could look at was the one where it was in the end zone and Coy Parrish was kind of underneath. And I'm not sure Sayin saw him underneath. But also that was a heck of a play by Parrish to get back and get his hands on the ball. And it wasn't like he was right there. He made a nice move and kind of was sort of lunging for it. So yeah, I looked at that and I'm like, I don't know how many throws he's going to be looking at in the film room this week and going, ooh, wish I had that one back.
That may be the only one. And I thought, as you said, Coy Parrish did a good job of maybe baiting the RPO throw there and just staying away long enough until the throw was winding up, and then he kind of jumped that route and got a hand on it. That was one of my notes as well, because he was 8 for 11 for 170 yards midway through the second quarter, which means he finished 15 of 16 for 156 yards and 3 touchdowns from like midway second quarter and on. 1 incompletion. That was the Max Clare little wheel route on the sideline that was probably too high for Max Clare, but certainly too high for a defender to catch as well. And the thing is, like, this is not the first time he's gone 15 of 16 in a stretch. He did it against Grambling. Made me wonder, like, how many times has he done this? Because you go back and it's like, well, probably not 15 of 16. But how many times has he been like 10 of 11 in a game? And it wouldn't shock me if he did it against Ohio or Washington. I might have to go through and see what the stretches are of just 1 incompletion over the course of 11 attempts or something like that, just to get an idea. Because yeah, he was precise, and it's crazy that we're now to the point of, well, let's talk about the incompletions. Yes,
Don't worry, it won't take long.
Yeah, the completions are fine, but he thought this one was like a little too high, and that one could have been, Jeremiah did have to slow up a little bit. And meanwhile, what about all of the others that were absolute dimes? And that's not what you're doing. It's just, it's interesting to look at his precision and examine it, because that was, like I said, that was one of my notes. Very, very impressed by what he did. And this is just now the norm, it seems. And we'll see what happens against Illinois and on. But like, if he does this against anybody, it's not going to shock me anymore.
No, no. It feels like this is sort of the baseline expectation right now. And, we'll talk about Illinois later, but Illinois' defense has not been amazing this year. Their offense is probably ahead of their defense. It might be, I saw someone on our board compare them to kind of, more or less in the neighborhood of Washington, sort of directionally in terms of what they are as a team. And so, yeah, I mean, we'll see what it looks like this weekend on the road, but yeah, so far, Julian Sayin, I had reasonably high expectations for him, and we're always kind of a little cautious with first-time starters that you don't want to get too far out of your skis. But I would say he's ahead of even what I had as, fairly high expectations for him coming into the year.
Let me talk about two more throws for Julian Sayin. The first one was the toe touch first down to Carnell Tate. Watching this live, because I had a perfect angle for it, Julian Sayin threw this right about the same time that Carnell Tate was breaking on this little comeback scramble route. It was like he threw it and just assumed, where else is Carnell Tate going to go? Like this, it was an incredible throw, an incredible catch, and just the result of a lot of work together by those two. And it's only going to get better. But that was a great result on a tough situation. And then the touchdown pass to Carnell Tate, where TV did a great job of showing the entire defense going with Jeremiah Smith in motion, and you got 5 guys running with Jeremiah, and then 1 guy in the secondary with Carnell Tate, and he stood no shot. And so that's one of the ways you can get a lot out of a guy like Jeremiah Smith when he's not the intended target. And you can do that for other guys as well. It's like, we'll have the defense focus on Jeremiah Smith, but who should be the beneficiary of all that focus? And on Saturday, it was Carnell Tate over and over again.
Yeah, that play, I mean, Jeremiah Smith pulled a ton of the defenders over there and pulled the high safety over with him. And then it looked like the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote on the other side of the field. The Carnell Tate just beep, beep, and then the defensive back just holding up the sign that says yikes. And then Tate was easily 5 yards clear of him. And that was another one where he wasn't that far out of the break. Like, he had not gotten that far behind the defensive back. Like, you could see it happening. But when Julian Sayin threw the ball, Tate was not, 5 yards clear. He was in the process of getting 5 yards clear. And Sayin did a nice job just sort of laying it right out there, right in the spot where Tate didn't have to slow down at all. Was not behind him, was just kind of right in stride, boom, right in the end zone. So yeah, that was a great play. And I thought that was a great example of what Jeremiah Smith can do without the ball in his hands, that he can really kind of pull the defense, like almost a gravitational attraction of him with the, pulling the defense with him over to one side of the field. And then, you have to do it, because if you don't, then Jeremiah Smith's the one going beep, beep and taking off and running forever. So you kind of have to do it. But it was, I thought that was a really, really just a game that Carnell Tate had in general, I think was really, really an important one for Ohio State to sort of show, okay, this is what happens. If you can go ahead and take Jeremiah Smith away. We have a Michael Jordan. We also have a Scottie Pippen. And this, this version of Scottie Pippen is probably also going to make the NBA's top 75 players of all time or whatever it was. This is not a one-man show here. And now that Carnell Tate has shown that, well, now you maybe can't shift all of your focus over to Jeremiah Smith, which then potentially opens stuff up for Jeremiah Smith. And after the game, PJ Fleck talked about it as a pick your poison thing, where, they decided we're going to really stop the run. We can't let Ohio State run over us. So then that opened up stuff deep. And even in the passing game, it's kind of a pick your poison. You can't double everyone. And so if you're going to double Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate's open. You want to try and double both of them? Okay, but Max Claire's open. And then, you're also at that point, you're opening up things in the run game. So Ohio State just so dynamic on offense and able to hurt you in so many different ways that you can't stop everything.
No, and it's like, why do we have to pick a poison at every turn? Is there a turn where can we pick a Kool-Aid of not poison? Can we just something nice, a refresher, a palate cleanser? Why is the only option poison?
Yeah, well, that's unfortunately, when you schedule Ohio State, that's what it is. Sorry to tell you, but that is just drink the delicious poison and move on with life and go play someone else next week. So one thing that I thought, one thing that we had talked about, and I think we've talked about on our board as well, is Ohio State going really 13 and 14 personnel heavy, especially in short yardage and goal line situations. And they kind of got away from that a few times during the game on Saturday night where, even when they were in sort of a bunch formation, they were in 11 personnel. So you had Brandon Inniss and Carnell Tate kind of packed in there where the tight ends normally would be, but then that gives you kind of an even more dynamic, receiving threat in those sort of situations. The Bo Jackson touchdown run, that was 11 personnel. The Jeremiah Smith touchdown catch where he caught it, where he was, kind of along the sideline, not the one that was like the slant, but the one that was kind of in the corner. That was 11 personnel. Just thought that was interesting that they had sort of gotten away, because I think a lot of people, us included, had sort of looked at that and thought, like, is this really the best option to take Carnell Tate off the field or take Jeremiah Smith off the field or take both of them off the field if you're in 14 personnel? And I think you saw, maybe not. Maybe there's ways to make this work with kind of your normal personnel and you do it with formation or something else.
And they're going to have to continue to grow that and be able to operate with 3 receivers and run the ball in that way. And in a similar vein, this is something I've been watching all season, because they've been throwing the ball out of the pistol, which is something going back a couple of years. They ran the ball like 95% out of the pistol, and it became a meme, basically. It's like, well, if they're in the pistol, they're going to run it. That's just how it goes. And yet we're seeing them this season, especially in this game, they threw out of it. And it's something where the play action is effective, the rollout is effective. Whatever they're doing from that has been effective, because I think generally you expect them to run, but now you can't. So that should also then, in theory, open up the run. So it is these tendencies that maybe they're already starting to break early in the season, I think is good. That just keeps defenses guessing down the road.
For sure, yeah. And, we talk all the time about how the defense has made itself unpredictable with both the fronts and what they're doing in the secondary. Offense, if you can break some of those tendencies early, sometimes you're going to set people up. You're going to do something, and you're going to do something, and you're going to do something, and you're going to set something up for later in the season. But if you are constantly having people guessing, it just keeps people from being able to cheat. And, much like you can't just always shift over towards Jeremiah Smith's side of the field, well, now you can't just automatically go, well, if they're in pistol, they're going to run. I mean, it was like you said, it was something like 40 out of 41 times or something like that a few years ago that they had run, and they had stuff with the side that the running back was on. They never ran same side. Like that was something that really changed last year with Chip Kelly. They ran more same side counter. So they have broken some of that stuff, and all of that has made them tougher to defend.
I want to jump to the other side of the ball, and feel free to go back to offense if you want. But for me, this was the most active and the most disruptive and most effective we've seen Eddrick Houston, which is very good to see. It's taken a while, but he was only credited with 1 tackle and 1 hurry. But you saw him around the ball. You saw him making trouble for the offensive line and getting into the backfield. This is something that Ohio State has been waiting on and has been working towards, and maybe now he's fully healthy, maybe he's fully motivated. Not that he's ever had a bad attitude or anything, because when you watch the videos that Ohio State produces where he's got the microphone and he's going around talking to guys in cold tubs, great personality, seems to love what he's doing, has maybe had to not mature, but just realize you were a starter, you're not now. Would you like to become a starter again? There's one way to do that, and that's by playing well and making plays. And I thought he had several moments where I wrote down his name, and it's like, that's good to see. And I think we're approaching the point where he has his game, and whether 2 tackles for loss and a sack and a forced fumble, something like that, where the TV broadcast continues to talk about him and actually gets his name right and doesn't, just like, which these broadcasts so far this season have not been great in terms of that whole thing, but I think he's on the move to becoming a very effective player.
Yeah, he certainly seems like he took a good step on Saturday night. And like you said, it didn't really show up on the stat sheet, but that was true of a lot of the guys for Ohio State on the defensive line, where the impact didn't necessarily match the stat sheet. I mean, I felt like Tywan Malone had a decent game, and he had 1 tackle. Will Smith, you felt a couple times, he had 2 tackles. But all these names, the fact that and we haven't even said Caden McDonald's name, and Caden McDonald is kind of the free space on the bingo card right now in terms of the middle of the defensive line. That was the area that we came into the year saying, oh boy, if they can't figure this out, oh boy, this could be trouble. And it just hasn't been an issue. Eddrick Houston maybe got off to a little bit of a slower start than you expected, but Tywod Malone has been better than expected. Caden McDonald, I had high expectations for, and he's been good. Will Smith, you started to see him a little bit. He's been good. So, that was one of the areas that we looked at and said, boy, if they get Dot at some point, that's maybe where it happens. And they're still, they still have plenty of teams. We'll see how Penn State runs the ball against them. We'll see how Michigan runs the ball against them. And, we'll see what it looks like in the postseason. But, so far, so good with those guys. And, you mentioned, the fill in the blank game and the Eddrick Houston game may be coming. Last week was the Caden Curry game. This week, Caden Curry had 4 tackles, and, you look at that after 11 tackles, and it's like, boy, Caden Curry didn't do anything. And, 4 tackles is already pretty good, but he had a couple plays where he really impacted things without getting on the stat sheet. One of them, he was kind of lined up on the edge, and a guy motioned over, and then he just kind of took one step out and just jammed the receiver, and then, threw the timing off on that. And there was another one where Minnesota was setting up sort of a middle screen, and Caden Curry's rushing the passer, and you can see him on the end zone angle, recognize it, stop, go back, and just erase the play. And it's just, that obviously the tackle showed up on the stat sheet, but it shows up as a tackle. It doesn't show up as he made this tackle for no gain. If he didn't make this tackle, it's probably a first down. That was a 10 yards saved kind of play. And that's just a very high IQ football play. And, you have seen him line up on the edge. You've seen him line up kind of over the center this season, and he can do lots of different stuff. But those are 2 examples of him making plays kind of in space and not getting to the quarterback, not tackling the running back on a off tackle run. He's doing stuff in all sorts of different ways and impacting the game, whether it shows up on the stat sheet or not.
Yeah, Bo Atkinson had one of those where he retraced his steps to tackle a screen, and you just seen very smart play. And I tweeted this out after rewatching the game. Will Smith has shown up at least once a week. He's showing up more than that now. And again, it doesn't always lead to a tackle, but when you're a nose tackle, it's not necessarily supposed to. He's getting in there. He's just creating disruption, and it's impressive to see. It's positive for now, but it's also very positive for the future when you figure Caden McDonald might not be around next year and he might be off to the NFL, to see that they've got that depth and they've built it, which is pretty surprising, I would say, at this point. One other aspect of the defense, I don't even know what to call it, Tom, because is it a 4-3 when you've got Peyton Pierce at linebacker, but you've also got Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese on the ends. It's basically a 6-man. It's like a 6-1 that they're throwing out there. And you can talk to Ross about what is actually this called, because they did have four down linemen, and then Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles would be the 5 and the 6 on the line. And then you've got Peyton Pierce just playing the one middle linebacker role and fighting through blocks and making plays. And it's just interesting to watch this defense continue to grow. And there were times where they had 8 guys on the line of scrimmage, and they bring 4, and good luck if you're the quarterback trying to figure out who those 4 are and where to go. But I don't. It's an interesting look when they finally get the 3 linebackers out there again. And if you look at their schedule, I think there's going to be other games where they've got 3 linebackers on the field again, because you're talking about, Michigan, you're talking about Penn State could be a game like that. We'll see about Illinois. You got Wisconsin, where you're probably going to play some multiple, use some 3 linebackers. Rutgers, perhaps, where it's like this again. It's not a 4-3, but it's 4 linemen and 3 linebackers. So I guess I just don't know what else to call it. You can ask Ross or somebody when you talk to them about this defense.
Well, I mean, if a 4-2 where you walk one of the guys up and you get a 5-1, if that's a penny, then I guess a 4-3, Tony, I think I would call that a hay penny. And if that's not the technical term, then the technical term is wrong. So there you go. I thought it was interesting. I saw Peyton Pierce out there starting, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I kind of looked around. I was like, oh no, they're in 3 linebackers. Okay, and it worked. And this is one of these examples where you look at the Ohio State defense, and you've seen them in dime, and it's okay. You've got Lorenzo Styles, and you got Devin Sanchez out there, and then now you're in 4-3, and they have the personnel where. I think Matt Patricia kind of shrugs and goes, yeah, whatever, man, that's fine. That's not a problem. We'll figure it out. And you kind of have the personnel for all of these groupings where you're not looking and going, well, if you can get them in this personnel, like, you could maybe see a problem there. Right now, it just sort of feels like they're in reasonably good shape no matter who's out there. And that's, they're going to get tested this weekend. I think you're going to see a lot of Lorenzo Styles this weekend, where Illinois' best receiver is in the slot a lot. So you may have a busy weekend for Lorenzo Styles. Dibs on the Lorenzo Styles career high tackles bold prediction. Just calling my shot there right now. But yeah, Peyton Pierce was just very solid. And, Arvell Reese has been like the breakout star, and Sonny Styles is the guy who it's his 4th year and everyone knows who he is. And he's, the established future NFL high draft pick. And then you got Peyton Pierce, and it's just like, oh yeah, there's not really a fall off there either. So yeah, I think James Laurinaitis deserves a lot of credit for, if you want to give him credit for Arvell Reese, even though Arvell Reese is kind of a little bit of an edge guy now, he certainly recruited Arvell Reese. Getting Peyton Pierce, that was very much a James Laurinaitis relationship. And that has turned into a really, really nice addition for the Ohio State linebacker room.
You mentioned like Matt Patricia, just, whatever, we'll put people wherever. You go back to 2001, having to play like C. Grant at corner. And was it 2004 against Iowa where their corners were like, they were injured, so they just had to stay in the 4-3 the entire time. And Iowa was just lighting them up in the pass game. And you just look back in the past and, Zach Bourne having to play middle linebacker where it's not always like this. There's not always depth, and there's not always quality depth that you can turn to. So just appreciate it while you've got it, because things can get bad quickly if recruiting isn't there, if development isn't there, if injuries take place. But so far so good. They've been able to handle everything that's been put in front of them.
Yeah, it has been so far so good on the defense, and I'll be interested to see what Illinois looks like this week, and it's going to be another kind of challenge, and we'll do an Illinois rewatch show, or maybe 2, depending on how much time we have this week. But it's going to be a different type of offense, certainly from what they faced last week. I want to swing back to the offense real quick and just mention James Peoples looked fantastic. Now, late in the game, the Minnesota defense is kind of worn down. He's got fresh legs, but man, he had bursts that you have not seen from him, hit the hole hard. He looked on Saturday night the way that he looked in the spring, the way that we saw him look at times last year, where we were anticipating, big things from James Peoples, and then he didn't really show up on the field early in the season. This is not me saying he is so back. This is me saying, all right, I'm officially intrigued again. Let's see what it looks like. Let's see what the distribution of carries looks like. I mean, Bo Jackson has very much taken over as RB1 for this team, because CJ Donaldson only had 3 carries. Peoples had 7, but most of them were kind of in the late moments of the game. Bo Jackson had 13 carries. So there's not really a question who is RB1 right now. And Donaldson feels like he's kind of carved out a little bit of a role as a goal line back or a short yardage back. But I'm really interested to see if James Peoples can kind of work his way back into getting first half carries, getting first quarter carries, because you've seen it a little bit. And I think I'm going to pull it up right now. He had 1 carry in the second quarter, 3-yard gain on 2nd and 1 in the second quarter, but that was it. And then everything else was in the fourth quarter. And when he came in the fourth quarter, it looked fantastic. I'm really intrigued to see if you can get him looking like he has in the past, where we have been really, really intrigued by him.
That was one of the only times he's gotten into like the second level with freedom of movement, and you saw what everybody likes about him. He's averaging 5.6 yards per carry right now, which you would take for the season if you could get that. I did kind of like the fact that Carlos Lachlan played 4 guys in this game. We saw Isaiah West out there as well. And not just as throwaway snaps, but he was out there when they still had starters out there, and you're feeling things out. Overall, like I was told before the Washington game that Bo Jackson was probably going to start getting some of C.J. Donaldson's snaps, and then of course C.J. Donaldson starts that game, and they run him right down the field, and James Peoples doesn't hardly play at all. So it's like, well, maybe the information was wrong. And then you look at this one, and it looks like, well, yeah, maybe he got C.J. Donaldson snaps because James Peoples got more run. I think they know what they're going to get out of C.J. Donaldson, and there's a place for that. I think they're still trying to figure out how best to get what James Peoples can give them, because there's more to give, and they're still trying to figure out this running game.
Yeah, it feels like there's a little bit they're still sorting out there. The passing game, it feels like they kind of know what they got. Running game, you would like to see them have a game where they just run over some people, because the offensive line has been pretty good this year, and the running backs have been good at times, but it just you haven't had quite the, we watched the Michigan games, and you haven't seen the runs that you see out of Justice Haynes. And I'm not talking about the 40-yarders. I'm just talking about, you don't see the 8 to 12-yarders with quite the consistency out of the Ohio State offense that you do out of Michigan at times. So that's one of the things that, I'm sure they would take more 60-yarders. That would be fine. But I'm sure they would also like to have, you just like to see them a little more consistent.
One other thing about the offense down the stretch, when Lincoln Keenos was in there, interesting to see Julian Sayin with his still paying attention to what's going on, had the helmet to his ear, listening to that. So, he's not completely checked out, which is good. You want him engaged and all of that. Back to the defense, one of the last things for me, IGB was everywhere involved in the run game as well as that boundary corner. He has no problem sticking his nose in there against the run and letting everybody know about it, letting the opposing sideline know about it. Whoever, anybody there to listen, he's going to let you know that he's there to defend the run as much as he is there to defend the pass. He did get away with the pass interference, though, when he was running down the field, grabbing a receiver. I shouldn't say grabbing. He just grabbed and stayed grabbed. So there's no ing. It was just a thing. It was present tense. It's just grabbed. But overall, again, he continues to excel. And I think that's about all I have from this game. Oh, that 4th down that Minnesota went for, that PJ Fleck said they had to, like, everybody on the Ohio State defensive line won their battle. Like, everybody on that play won their battle, and there was just nowhere for Minnesota to go. And we've seen that on many occasions where everybody on the Ohio State defense does their job. And we know they always say, just do your job. It's much easier said than done, but there are so many occasions this season where everybody has done their job and there's nothing available for the quarterback or the running back.
Yeah, if you can win the line of scrimmage in those 3rd and short, 4th and short kind of situations, you're going to win the play more often than not. You'll every once in a while get the play action, almost trick play where, okay, that you get got sometimes, but just winning at the point of attack in those situations will win you the play a lot more often than not. I thought it was interesting that, what stopped the Ohio State drives. One was that Carnell Tate borrowed Will Howard's cleats on the first drive. Turf Monster got him on what would have otherwise been a first down. Lincoln Keenholz, the first down was there on that one. If he had, followed the blocking, what were the play was, Ryan Day, not real happy about that on the sideline. I had not seen that until they showed it on TV, but I had not noticed that during the thing. But yeah, he was not real happy about that. But, there were a couple times, those are 2 plays where Ohio State really kind of stopped themselves. It wasn't that they got beat at the point of attack. It wasn't that they made a bad throw or something. It was just, one guy, the guy went the wrong place and one guy tripped over his feet. It happens like that will happen from time to time. So basically it could have been worse is my takeaway there. Cause that was 2 of the 3 times that they got, stopped on non-kneel down possessions. They missed a field goal on the first one and punted on the other one. So that was pretty good overall for Ohio State. The last thing I had, Tony, I took a lot of pictures of Coy Parrish on Saturday before the game, during the game. more than any other Minnesota player. Tony, can you guess why I thought, I maybe want to have Coy Parrish pictures? Because I thought it a couple times during the game as well.
Because he might be a nice replacement for Caleb Downs next year.
And we don't want to put guys in the transfer portal, but the reality of modern college football is when you have a guy who is like more talented than all of his teammates, a lot of times Dylan Thieneman ends up playing for Oregon and not for Purdue, or Max Clare ends up playing for Ohio State and not for Purdue. And I looked at Coy Parrish and I thought, you watch him return that punt, you watch him, where he's, he looks like he's going to get tripped up and he just maintains his balance and spins and jukes a couple of guys. And, I don't know that he even got anything, but it was just like, that was a really impressive athletic play. The drop, dropping into coverage on the one pass breakup that we mentioned earlier in the end zone. He had, he was in coverage a few times, made a lot of tackles. He was really impressive. And it's just, stuff happens in college football. 9 tackles for him, plus that PBU. Stuff happens in college football. You're not necessarily there forever. He may stay at Minnesota for his whole career. We'll see. I did think it was very interesting at the end of the game. I don't know if they showed it on TV or not, but Parrish was over talking to PJ Fleck, had a long conversation with PJ Fleck on the sidelines at the end of the game. And Fleck was actually asked about it in the post game and just said he was sort of talking to him about, they're moving forward and not necessarily about the game itself. But, it's just, it's not great that you watch college football right now and everything is sort of done through the filter of what does this mean for the college football playoff? And boy, a group of 5 team, where is their head coach going to be coaching next year? But it feels like that's just kind of the nature of college football. And, you could see Coy Parrish wearing a different team's jersey and playing in the college football playoff next year.
Last year, it was Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs telling Keenan Bailey, hey, if Max Clare jumps in that portal, you should go after him. And so, they went after Dylan Thieneman. They would go, we're not throwing people in, but Coy Parrish, I don't know that it came down to Ohio State and Minnesota in his recruiting, but I know that Ohio State was very, very involved. I don't know if they were the runner-up, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were. And he's somebody that they definitely wanted, and I have no trouble believing they would take in an instant if he wanted to come aboard in January when the portal opens for him or for Ohio State. So, anything else, Tom?
I think we've covered it pretty much. A pretty dominating game. It was maybe more dominating for long stretches than it even seemed on Saturday night, where it was just Minnesota just got. They had that opening drive, and then it was just a whole lot of nothing for basically the whole rest of the game until it was 35-3.
So, good job. We've dissected this entire game. Any of the Minnesota fans that are watching, we've depressed you and then also supremely angered you talking about your best player and how, hey, good luck holding on to him next year. So, fantastic. If everybody but the Minnesota fans could hit the thumbs up, we'd appreciate it if you're watching on YouTube. And, of course, whatever kind of review, 5-star or greater, that you would like to leave on your podcast platform of choice, we would appreciate. And as always, you can continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. It is the absolute best way to support what we do. Sign up, become a member, say hello to us there on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. So that will do it from here. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you all later.